Uh, it's like late at night, and I want to get this video done because this is all like part of my project to do more booktubing and get things out of the way. I've been reading a lot of stuff recently, but this is my continuation of reading Dostoevsky. So last time I read Crime and Punishment, which is bigger. And now I just finished Notes from the Underground, which is significantly smaller. Of like the five, like important Dostoevsky novels, that's the short one, and the rest of them are big. So, I was like, what should I read first of Dostoevsky, since I got this project of like reading all these Russian novels on my TBR. And got Crime and Punishment because that was the one I wanted to really read. And then before I hopped into the other big three, I just decided to get the small one out of the way. People say read Notes from the Underground first because it's small and probably gives you a good idea about his state of mind after he came back from the prison camp. And yeah, I guess maybe it's not a bad place to start off, especially if you're in the philosophy stuff. That's like why most people read Dostoevsky, is to get into his philosophy. But I really wanted more of a narrative thing, and Notes from the Underground is not very narrative. I mean, it is in the second part. It's cut into two parts, and the first part is it's like his seething blog. I don't know. I guess the Notes from the Underground. I guess it is him. I don't know. Raskolnikov is not him in Crime and Punishment, but I don't know. The Notes from the Underground feels too personal, and the first part is all just him talking. There's no narrative. And you can go on Wikipedia and they'll break down it's in certain parts, and there's certain things mentioned in each part of the first part, and it's very structured. But when you're reading it, doesn't feel structured, just feels like him ranting, kind of like he has a seething blog. And I really got that vibe from the first part. And it was kind of I'm spoiled because I live in the age of the internet, and I can just go on online and see people seething over politics or just personal issues on Facebook, or any kind of place where just people write. And of course, it's written in the 1860s, and there's nothing like that. And he was self-publishing this in his own journal. It wasn't another journal that was owned by someone else. Him and his brother were running this journal, and went defunct pretty fast. Only lasted a year. But he was there was all these other things where he published his periodical installments of his novels, and this was Notes on the Underground is mostly just I forget what the journal's called, and I don't want to look it up, but I was looking on Wikipedia about it, and it's almost he went too crazy on Notes on the Underground. And then I think his brother died, and I think that's part of the reason why I went defunct. I mean, there was other people sending stuff into his journal, but it's not it wasn't long lasting. Some of these other Russian journals or periodicals where you can read things gone on before for 100 years. And yeah, so the first part, I guess I didn't appreciate it because I live in the modern age where I can just go online and watch people seethe. Go wow, I hate life, ah! And but then I kept on reminding myself, this is like written in the 1860s in Tsarist Russia. Sorry, I'm really tired. Been up all night. Uh, yeah, there's all these as I'm making this video, there's all those college protests are going on, and I'm getting way too much into it because I'm into like geopolitical stuff. I'm like really always heavy into geopolitical stuff. So now that it's come to like America and the college stuff, and I was up all night, you know, just like watching these protests on YouTube. But yeah. So reading Dostoevsky also kind of gets me away from that, and which is good. I need to get away from news, get away from politics, and also geopolitics. I follow way too much Ukrainian war news and too much Israeli Gaza stuff, and you know it's all dark, but it's like too personal. And Dostoevsky's dark. The mood is dark. I guess it's easy for me to just like hop into Dostoevsky because he's dark, but he's not something that's like relevant. So I can feel kind of safe because I'm still in the same mood, but like or similar mood, but it's not as relevant right now to me. So it's kind of like escapist still. So the second part of like the novel I appreciate more because it's more narrative, but it's like it's all about like the underground man, which I guess is Dostoevsky, being cringe in public or just like having cringe, his inner cringe and his outer cringe, combining. You know, I don't know. It's hard. I'm so into genre literature that it's hard for me like to separate myself. I was like, yes, that's what I would do if I was Tarzan too. I'm trying to read the more famous books, more classics, and other than silly stuff. And you know, I guess since I read so much genre stuff, it's hard for me like to separate myself from like hypotheticals and stuff. So like yeah, the underground man. I guess is also spoiled because I don't need to be cringe if I can like display my cringe online, and I don't have to like go in public to display my cringe like he does in the 1860s. There's a scene where like he like goes he goes to this dinner of these friends, not like friends, they're associates from his like public school or something, his grammar school that he went to, and then they're all grown up, and he's all jealous of them, but like for no particular reason, and he like doesn't like them, but he like demands that he goes to this dinner for them, like of this like person he hardly like knows, and he just like imposes himself on them when they're trying to have a good time. I mean, like they're kind of like frat boys, and like I wouldn't want to be around them. I don't think like they're like presented, in any kind of positive way. Matter of fact, they're like there's the one guy that he like really doesn't know that much and doesn't like, but is like the party's kind of for, is like saying that this is when like serfs are still owned, and the guy is saying like he's just gonna like use his right as the lord, to have affairs with the woman on the first night of marriage of his serfs or something, and like the underground man is rightly disgusted by that, but he like it's just like a brash comment some frat boy kind of character makes. It's like you don't even know if it's serious or it's true or anything, but he imposes himself to go to this like dinner of people he doesn't like, and I don't know. I wouldn't be caught dead doing that, so like I don't know. It's so cringe. It's like I want to say like I've done. See, I'm a people person, but I'm not a group person. Like I'm a one-on-one or one or two. Like I can deal with like I actually have a lot of friends, but it's I'm just not a group person. And then there's like some people I know who are group people, and like they run in different crowds, and like I'm not a group person, and I know group people, and I've gotten like a lot of political arguments online where it got very cringy, where like I'm just arguing with a group of people or something, and they're all in an inner circle, and like I'm not in that group at all. And I can relate to a lot of that, but it's like online. But then again, I don't live in the 1860s, and I'm trying like life is just so different now. Um, I lived a little bit before the internet was big, so I remember a time where things were more real. And America, the thing is, like America's really fake and was always kind of fake, but now it's really fake. When I was reading Crime and Punishment, I thought like Dostoevsky was being kind of fake in the novel, but like Notes from the Underground turned my like opinion around. He's actually really honest with himself. At least when he was writing that, because it's like really, he's really going into like his inner cringe and like holding on to it and not letting it go. He's basking in it, sort of, and I wanted this after just reading like Crime Punch, like Dostoevsky, he's not honest with himself. But then I'm reading like Notes from the Underground, and he may not be completely honest with himself. No one is, but he's way more honest with himself than I thought he was, and it's really kind of like sets me back because America is just so fake. Okay, like I, when I was reading both of these books, I didn't like them as I was reading them. But like as days went by after I finished them, I started to like them. And this is like my own cringe. But this is the only analogy that I can like relate to like the effects of his work on me. Okay. So in like the late 90s, there was this kid. I didn't even like him. It was my mom's friend. I got along with him enough, but anyway, he wasn't really my friend. He was like my mom's kid friend, and we would go to his house, and he was really nerdy, and his mom would go to the local video store and get all the videos. They would like he would just watch things. This is before streaming services and stuff. And this was like not Blockbuster. This was one of those boutique places that had rare VHSs. It was in the city, in the northeast part of the city. And I used to go there a lot too, but I'm a little farther away from it. He was just around like the block. So he got like all the good anime that was being released on VHS before there were streaming services or high-speed internet. I used to go over his house, and we used, he would like showcase it. He was proud. Thinking back, I always thought he watched it by himself, but he only he would show me each episode on these VHSs. And yeah, this is a tangent to getting off. And these videos are all impression. I don't want to break them break down Dostoevsky and some kind of there's too many people already doing that already. This is just a booktuber impression kind of thing. And maybe like relating some spoilers and talking about the spoilers. But anyway, there was all these animes. There was Tenchi Moyu, Rama One Half, Yurusei Yatsura. They were all kind of like pervy. The Japanese like males and anime writers, I mean, they're kind of honest with themselves. America is really Puritan. And everybody who says, like, America is Puritan usually uses in the wrong context and then starts being Puritanizing, yourself. While they also say America is Puritan, they start being Puritan themselves. And they don't even know it. Like, it's so bizarre. But, like, especially with this culture, and I don't want to get into that. But anyway, the Japanese are like really, were more honest about sexuality and stuff. So I'd go over and watch these videos, and they would blow my mind. But like, they weren't like too deep and depressing, Like, yeah, there was like drama in it. But then he like got Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is like the biggest internet meme in the anime community, just going on and on for like years, and it just doesn't stop. And um, I know that this is cringe. This is hugely cringe. I'm like a big Neon Genesis Evangelion fan, but the thing is, I wasn't when I first saw it. Like when I first saw it, it's not that long, so I would sit there like for 2 days watching this thing with him, and like 2 or 3 weeks went by, and I hated it. Right, I was like, God, that was like really annoying. I might just be misremembering it. Maybe I did like it from the beginning. I just don't remember sitting there. This is 20 plus years ago. So more than 20 plus years. I don't, Jesus. It's really long ago. Because these videos came out in like 1998, and Evangelion came out in like 1994 in Japan. So like, it must be 26 years. God. Anyway, I don't remember like intently watching that. Like I was watching Rama One Half or Urusei Yatsura or Tenchi Muyo. I was paying attention to them. And then when I was watching Evangelion, I lost interest and I watched them all, but I just didn't vibe with me. And then like a couple weeks went by, and I was like just start overthinking about it, because it's really depressing. Like it's just, I don't know. And I know this is a little cringe and it doesn't sound like it related to Dostoevsky, but that's the same kind of thing. Like, I forced myself. Everybody was like, oh, you got to read Dostoevsky. You got to finish his novels. You can't just, like, get into it and read a few chapters. You have to, like, force yourself to get to the end of one of his novels. And I was like, something came up, and I wanted to read some Russian novels because of that. And, I wanted to force myself to get through some that I was struggling with in the past. And, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to read a chapter every day, at least one chapter every day. Maybe more, but at least one every day. I'm going to get through Crime and Punishment. And I did it. And I didn't, hate it, but I didn't, like it. And then only, a few weeks later, I started liking it, after the fact, after I started thinking about it. And that's the same thing with Notes from the Underground. And it's much shorter. And I hated reading it, kind of like I was okay with, Crime and Punishment. It was like a ritual, but Notes from the Underground, it was very cringy. It was kind of hard to read because he's just so, bringing his cringe home. So it's the exact same feeling as 26 years ago or something, when I was a couple weeks after watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, and then just becoming this mega fan that and I've been a mega fan ever since. And I overthink it. I overthink about the scenes, and that's why I've been thinking about Crime and Punishment. I've been overthinking the scenes, not so much with Notes from the Underground, but probably that will change. I'll be like, yeah, as I relate this into his other stuff. So yeah, Notes from the Underground. So I gotta take a drink. Hold on, So yeah, Notes from the Underground. So yeah, he's at this party and he's imposing himself. And before that, the second part of the novel has all the scenes, and the first part is him getting angry because he goes to a fight, and he sees a fight and he wants to get involved in the fight, it's a barroom fight or something, or pool room fight, and no, the fight's already over before he can get involved. But some police from the street, they come in, and he's apparently short or something, the underground man, and the big hulking, like, police officer picks him up and puts him aside and walks past him because he's in the way. And it's just, the cop is doing his like routine. He's just trying to, do his job. Apparently, like, the underground man like obsesses with this. I don't know if like, I don't know. I looked up Dostoevsky's height. I think he was like 5'7". And the Russians are like really tall. I know a lot of Russians, and they're like pretty tall. And I think even for the 1860s, I mean, it wasn't like medieval times, but like, they're still pretty tall. And I think Dostoevsky's like shorter than the average Russian, but 5'7" is not really manlit. It's not that bad. I mean, shorter than I am, but like I'm 5'11", so 5'7's pretty short, but like it's not horrible. But I guess like I don't know. I guess he's in like Napoleon complex realm, but he doesn't say his height. And the underground man might be shorter. I'm just like quoting like Dostoevsky's height as online that I like read. So maybe the underground man is shorter, and like I don't know, and he's a different character, and he's not Dostoevsky, but he just like obsesses over this cop, and he like starts stalking this cop, and he like does this whole thing where he wants to bump into the cop, so like he has like some kind of excuse to make a duel or something, and he's just raging, and he's so cringy. The underground man is this like is he's like he hates himself so much. He's like similar to Raskolnikov, and I guess if I read this before, Raskolnikov might be like a more interesting character to me, because when I was reading the Underground, no, I was when reading the Crime and Punishment. I'm just tired. Sorry. I was reading Crime and Punishment. Like I wasn't as deep into Raskolnikov as I should have been, and I think if I read Notes from the Underground, I would have been like deeper into him. But yeah, so that's like the first scene, and the second part is this like cop issue of like this cop that moves him when he's, and then there's the whole thing which I already said, but like himself imposing himself at this party and being in like a kind of a you know trying to say curse words so I don't get like, so if I ever monetizes these videos somehow, I'm gonna be demonetized. Yeah, so he like, I don't know. There's this. That's the next scene is like he's all imposing himself at this party he doesn't want to be, and then they like go to a brothel. They're trying to get away from him, and he's still like following them and demanding, like imposing himself on them. And they're going to like a brothel, and this is like the second part that like really just takes me out when I'm like thinking about this. When I was reading this, I was kind of like bored, but when I was like weeks later, like a week later, like this was the thing that like I honed in on him and this prostitute. It's the same thing with like Crime and Punishment, except for like Crime and Punishment, Sonia the prostitute, she's way too pure and just unrealistic, and I don't know what's he thinking, or you know, um, but then he goes to this cat house in Notes from the Underground, and he meets a more realistic prostitute. I mean, this woman's more realistic, and I have multiple majors, and one of them is a PSS. It's psychology and social science, and like it might just sound like I'm like overthinking this too much, but in sociology, like I studied a lot of like poorer classes or disenfranchised classes or classes that did things, and I also have a history degree, and look, things have changed really, really weirdly in the last like 30 years. I seen prostitutes in like real life when I was a kid. Like I would be walking down the street, and a streetwalker would come up to me, like when I'm like a late teens or like early 20s, and they would say something like, "Hey, You want to have a good time? And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Because it was so rare. It wasn't like something you would. It's like you had to be like walking in the wrong neighborhood or like to get to like some store. Like I remember me and my sister, we had to like go somewhere. I think it was like to get some part for some car, or we had to drop something off or get something for my mom. And we were taking the van, and yeah, my mom must have been in the hospital. She's always in the hospital, but so my sister was driving the car, and this is before I had my license, but I was in my 20s, or I was in my late teens. I could have drove, but I didn't have my license because I'm poor and stuff. But anyway, that's a different story. But we were in a poorer area than my poor self was, and like we were in an area that was, and this woman just comes up to me and like, hey, you want to have a good? I'm like, what? Like I didn't know how to react, and I didn't even know what was happening, and like, and she just walked on. You know, that was like super rare, and now like we live in the age of OnlyFans girls and like whole like suburban girls who've like you would not have been prostitutes or secretly like, they get around with the OnlyFans thing would not like be that 20 years ago. Now it's like a lot of them are like people um, and it's like an epidemic, and no one will talk about it. That's the scary thing. Like no one will like talk about it. It's a forbidden taboo issue. But now like I can relate to things that happening in like Dostoevsky's novel because I would not be able to relate to that. Um, like cat houses weren't like common in the 90s. There was one, and I didn't know what it was. My friend told me. We were driving by it, and it was like the 2000s. And the thing is, cat houses in my area, they're not in the city. Like, in okay, so Dostoevsky, he's living in St. Petersburg in Tsarist Russia, and like it's legalized somewhat. They have this thing called a yellow card system, where if you become a prostitute, you have to like be registered, and you're a second class citizen, but you're allowed to like do it within the rules, and that's apparently the history in Russia. So like you're demoted in society, you're not allowed in proper society, but you're not like also put in jail. So that's like what the situation was in Russia. But in America, in the 1990s and the early 2000s, I mean, we had cars. St. Petersburg doesn't have cars in the 1860s. You had like horse and carriage, and I guess if you had to have like the cat house locally in the city. But me and my friend, I didn't know what, like we were driving past this house and this building, and it was all colorful. It was like very weird, And I was like, hey, that's a weird house, and he's like, yeah, oh, that's a weird building. I was like, yeah, yeah. I wonder what is that like a club or something? He's like, no, that's a cat house. I was like, what? Oh, the cat house? Oh, I was like, what's that? Oh, wait, I know what you're talking about. It's like I read about it, but I didn't know what it was. And it was like all in the boonies, and they didn't have like that in the city. Like I'm a city boy, or I'm closer to the city, and that would just blew my mind that like you could go out in the country and there would be a bunch of them. But like I thought they were all legal, and they're like not legal, but they were there, and because they were so in the boonies and out there in the boondocks, like I guess they got away with them. But I think that place closed down. But you know, it wasn't something common, but now everybody's like an OnlyFans girl, and now there's like prostitutes everywhere, or like people tell you, I'll go on a date with a girl, and you know, she'll tell me that, and yeah, okay, I'm gonna get a lot of like, simp, people if they see this, but like it's not a deal breaker for me. But anyway, it's more common now, and it was like it would like 20 years ago if someone told me that It's like, this is like a movie, man. This is like, a plot of a movie. It would just blown my mind. But, now it's like very common. But in Soviet, no, I mean, not Soviet, Tsarist Russia, it was really common, apparently. So he's talking to this like prostitute because he follows his friends because he wants to harass his unfriends, his not friends. And like, he wants to impose himself on them. And, they're just trying to get away from him, and they already like got into the building and got their own like girls and stuff, and it's not explicitly said what like he's doing. I guess like Dostoevsky's trying to get through the censors because he doesn't ever says that she's a prostitute. So when like you don't know what build if you're like don't have like if you don't live in 1860s Tsarist Russia, you don't know what's going on. He just goes into a building, he's following his friends, and then they're suddenly gone, and he sees this woman. In the next chapter, he's woke up, and then there's the woman's there, and the woman's staring at him in the dark, and he just starts being cringe. This woman doesn't know him. Like, she's not a date. She's not a romantic date. He had sex with her. It's implied. I guess, he can't say that in the novel, but it's implied because the censors would just, like censor it out. I heard a lot of this stuff would get censored, and mostly it's the stuff about like when he started talking about Christ, which was like would get censored. Not because Tsarist Russia's anti-Christian, is very pro-Christian, but he would just talk about Christ in the wrong way. And I don't know if like other things got censored, but anyway, he wakes up, and it's after the act, I guess, after he fell asleep, and she's staring at him, and she's like young and simple, like she's not like she's just chilling, she's vibing, and he starts like he's like, you're gonna get old, and you're gonna like, you're not gonna, things are gonna be horrible, and they're gonna kick you out, and they're gonna use you, and blah 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 blah. And this girl probably already knows all this stuff, and but he's just like digging into her because he wants to torture her, and she didn't do anything bad to him. Like, okay, I got in fights with girls, but usually they do things with me, where my insanity comes out, they done something first, But like, I couldn't relate to him because I don't know. I couldn't relate to the underground man, and he's just being full cringe. It was like, this is not the girl to like, to dump that stuff on. Like, she didn't lie to you. She didn't like, break your heart. She's just the prostitute doing her business. But like he like dumps on her on all this emotional stuff and tries to crush her, and he's like he's like implying that he can save her and fix her, and he walks out of the building, and then he's all like angry that she's not showing up because and then like she does show up weeks later, and oh, he has his butler. He's poor, but he still has this like butler. I guess like they're all poor. I guess there's like some kind of inflation issue. You know the timing is great for this because, I mean, it sounds really horrible, but like, I can't eat enough. I'm not eating enough because of inflation, or have to be careful. Like, okay, I'm eating a lot, but then there'll be like a week where like I have to like budget, because things are so bad with what has happened since the pandemic. But like before this, food was cheap, like 4 years ago. Like all my life, food was pretty cheap. And, you never had to budget. It was just, falling off the shelves. And everybody always had, well, actually, there was one time in my life, but that wasn't because the society was poor. It was because, like, I was a latchkey kid. But anyway, that's some, like, divorce stuff. That's my own trauma. But, like, there's... he has his butler, and like he's poor and the butler's poor, but the butler's still there, and the butler like is passive aggressive. Like the butler's like, old and wise, but like he's still on the take and refuses to go because even like this guy's poor, he's so used to being like his Jeeves or something that like he refuses to go and he looks down on his master and he's always like doing these passive aggressive things usually relating to like his pay by just like standing there or like sighing and he's like and you know the prostitute shows up because she wants to like I don't know date him or like get out of like he tried to convince her to get out of like the life and so like weeks later she actually does show up and the butler's there and watching all of this and the butler's imposing himself in a passive aggressive way which is like it's really really great. That's like the best. I was like kind of laughing at this part. This is like the part I like the most where like the butler is just being like passive aggressive in every scene and oh god what's his name and they usually have this character list in front of these translations, but this one doesn't because it's so short. Lisa's the prostitute, and see, I hated this when I was reading this, but now like I'm loving it. Apollon's the is the butler. Apollon, I think it is. Yeah. So Apollon is this like super passive aggressive and he hates Apollon because he knows what Apollon's doing. Like Apollon's like the master at passive aggressive stuff. He's my favorite character in the book. And he's like just a minor character. So yeah, he starts dumping on like the prostitute again. So first he got her out of there, convinced her to leave the lifestyle, and now he's like, no, I brought you here because I'm cringe and I want to be cringe to you and I want to torture you with my cringe and you did nothing to me. You didn't break my heart or anything. This is not like she didn't. I don't know. I'm thinking about my own issues, but I also relate to like women that like were bad women but didn't do anything like that to me, so like and I didn't dump on them, but he's just dumping on this woman that did nothing to him. Like she didn't like seduce him or break his heart. She was just like I don't know, the prostitute he went to see, and now he's like torturing again. And this is all like flashbacks. The underground man like is in his 40s when he's relating all this. He's like he's like close to my age or something. He's like his early 40s or late 30s, and he's some kind of like clerical clerk in like a dead end job in Russia. And he's relating things in his early like 20s where he's like being cringe and stuff. And he's hating himself for it. Oh man, I saw some Wojaks on Reddit where it was making fun of like all the Dostoevsky characters in different novels and was using all the Wojak memes and putting them as the different characters in all the novels. And the one for the Underground Man was really great because the Underground Man's just seething. So yeah, the second Russian novel I got through on my New Year's resolution to read more novels. I'm reading other stuff. And I'll probably make videos about that. I'm even reading not Russian things. I'm reading a lot of Chinese literature, Irish literature, hardboiled crime novels, on the side. But, I've been picking them up more sporadically, and this is more of a ritual. Like getting through Dostoevsky things more like it's like tea ceremony for me. So before Notes from the Underground, I tried to read a little bit of Dead Souls because he's always mentioning Gogol in his novels. He's always like name dropping Gogol, like, and he did it in Crime and Punishment, and he did like several times in Notes from the Underground. And I tried to read Gogol before Dead Souls, and I liked it. I liked Dead Souls, but two things happened. First, my mom had an operation, and I had to take care of her as she was recovering. I was just not able to focus on reading, so I had to abandon the read a chapter a day of Russian stuff for a couple days or a couple weeks. And the second thing that happened was it's too different. Like it's really good, but it's like too humorous. Like Dead Souls is really funny and kind of like upbeat so far. I guess maybe it'll get darker, but I don't know. It's like upbeat and like it's just really funny. And the mood transition from Dostoevsky to Gogol Dead Souls, I've been struggling to get through Dead Souls because like I'm stuck in Dostoevsky's like headspace right now. Like he's gotten me. He's gotten a hold of me. He's reeled me in, and now like it's hard to read like something that's like the total opposite. And Dead Souls is just like the total opposite. And I bought a Pushkin collection because I kind of like want to start from like the beginning Russian writers and move on because really Pushkin and Gogol are the two guys that start really modern Russian literature. And then like in the 40s, 60s, there's an explosion. There are several guys. There's Turgenev, uh, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, people I can't even pronounce their names right now. I'll probably butcher them, so I'm not even going to try. But there's just a bunch of guys. But there's like two guys, Pushkin and then Gogol, who kind of like, if you want to start from the beginning, it's those two, and they don't write too much. Well, Pushkin is hard to translate. You can't translate his poetry. He does a lot of poetry, so like his stuff that gets translated that's like readable in English is prose, and it's like that's only. Pushkin was really experimental. I heard like he was just doing everything. He was doing poetry, short stories, attempted novels. He had all these like novels he didn't finish that are kind of like short. They're not even novellas really in page length. They're like short stories, but like they were going to be novels, but he would just like throw them away. And then Gogol's kind of like the first guy who got like a real novel set. Dead Souls is kind of like the first novel. I know people say Pushkin wrote some other, but they're all like short, and like most of them are like unfinished. They're almost like novella length at best, and Dead Souls is kind of like novel size. And I'm sure in Russia there's just a bunch of other stuff that's untranslated. The thing is, only the best of the best or most famous gets translated. Like I know English literature has so many like forgotten writers that like people pick up on, and when I'm watching these booktube videos about booktubers, especially the people that are in the Victorian literature, they're always like finding somebody that's like unknown that like they like and they hone on. Um, so I'm sure there's a bunch of other Russian stuff from that time period to just. But in English literature, you go English translations, Pushkin and Gogol, and then like there's an explosion, all these other guys, and Dostoevsky one of the guys come after it. And Dostoevsky's always like name dropping Gogol, so I kind of wanted to read Gogol, but it's just Gogol is like too funny and upbeat so far. Like I was having too much of a good time. I'm sort of a masochist anyway, but like Dostoevsky, I'm now in this headspace, so it's even worse. Um, but at least it's like taking me away from all the stuff in the news. So yeah, is there anything else I can say? I don't know. Oh, I'm reading The Idiot now. That's the like. I kind of put aside Dead Souls. I'm gonna maybe try to get farther into it, but it's like it's a different headspace completely. So I'm reading Idiot, and I'm not that far into it, but I've been told that Idiot is like the reverse Crime and Punishment. So like Raskolnikov is like so fallen and so like beat down, and Prince Mishkin is like pure and like a stand-in for Jesus. And I even think like the the women are different. So Sonia is like pure in Crime and Punishment, but I think Nastasia, Filipova or Bovna or whatever her name is, I think she's fallen, but I haven't got into it that much. Like I think I'm just assuming guys walked up to him after he wrote Crime and Punishment and be like, "Yo, that's not like how prostitutes are. Like they're not that pure, dude." You know, and I'm probably imposed. I haven't got that far into it, so this is all just my theory that so far, that like he's the idiot is like a reverse version because people came up and started criticizing to him like things that about Crime and Punishment that were just unrealistic, and he's like, I'm gonna write a reverse novel now where Raskolnikov is good and he's Prince Mishkin, and Sonia is not pure. Nastasia is and there's a whole flip around. Like it just feels like a flip around already. And I tried to read The Idiot before years ago. I already mentioned Neon Genesis Evangelion, so it's obvious I'm a weeb. But I was really into Akira Kurosawa films, and I was trying to watch. I was really into this. There was this truncated version of a film that he made that's like shorter, and there's a larger version out there, but like it's missing, it's lost. So there's a shorter version of this film he made on The Idiot, and it's a Japanese version of The Idiot. I remember watching it and not I remember it being good, but also I remember it like I was missing a lot of things in context, and I didn't know what was happening because it's cut down. Like the surviving copy is the shorter version. And then also I was unfamiliar with the book, so I was like, I'm going to read the book. But this was at a time when I was just not familiar with Russian Orthodox Christianity, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and not familiar with like Dostoevsky or existentialism. So I couldn't get far in The Idiot because I was an idiot. So I didn't get far. And now years later, after I went church hopping to different churches and like, or different, I was with the Buddhist temples too. So but I was going to a Russian church for a while, and I think The Idiot, you have to understand Russian Christianity, and it's about suffering, and Russian culture is really about suffering, and it's much more like a version of Christianity, or it's not like Protestantism or Catholicism. I grew up around Protestants and Catholics, and I didn't really count. I did know Greeks, but I didn't know Russians until like a couple of years after the Soviet Union fell. Like, I didn't run into Russians often. If I ran into Russians, they were already very Americanized. Like their Russianness was gone. The only people I would run into that were Eastern Orthodox back in the 90s were Greeks. And Greeks are kind of hip because they're Mediterranean, like, it, they didn't, their Orthodox Christianity wasn't exuding from them. Like, it was like, I would confuse them with Italians, Americans. But, so they didn't like, it didn't exude to them, but exude from them. So when I went to an Orthodox Christianity, Russian Orthodox church, it was really different and beautiful, but it was like also very kind of like about much more about suffering. And The Idiot is The Idiot so far, I'm not that far into it, but it seems much more like a Christian novel. Like, I should have read Crime and Punishment years ago as my first Dostoevsky novel and not have read The Idiot, because The Idiot is not like a book that a young man can read with outside of context and knows what's going on, because Prince Mishkin's obviously Jesus, and like he's a Jesus stand-in kind of character. Where like Crime and Punishment, yeah, it has existentialism and philosophy, but it's not like, it doesn't have this very foreign form of Christianity in the book that needs to be explained. Like, if I was a young man and I wanted to read a Dostoevsky novel, I think I could like get through Crime and Punishment first if I didn't notice context and I didn't know any of that cultural stuff, because yeah, the philosophy would be a little weird, but it's not, you can hop into it. And I think Notes on Underground is pretty good. Um, but it was a shame. The reason why I didn't read Dostoevsky for years was because I tried to read The Idiot first, and I didn't know the context of what was going on or why or what the novel was about. And now, like, I'm reading The Idiot, it's clicking, and I know I'm not that far, so I can't say that much. But it's definitely more of I think it's more religious than Crime and Punishment. Crime and Punishment, I mean, he probably was, there's religious arguments you can make for Crime and Punishment, but it's not like over the top. So like Crime and Punishment would be to Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, where it's not like imposing on you, but The Idiot would be like C.S. Lewis, because it's all and this is Protestant Christianity and blah blah blah. Where like Tolkien, it's like you can read Lord of the Rings and never be like realize it's a it's kind of like Jesus' journey, and the ring is sin, and like you could be totally not in that cultural mindset of like Catholicism, and it could just go over your head completely. If like I know a lot of Lord of the Rings fans, and it happened to me too. Like when I was reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, it went right over my head when I was in my early 20s when I was reading those, because I didn't know. I just I picked up the book. I didn't know anything about Tolkien. I was a Dune guy in my teens. I read like Dune, and I was really into sci-fi. And like when I tried to, my friends were into fantasy, and they would be always like, "You gotta read Tolkien." I was like, don't force it on me. And then like when I got out of high school, I was more by myself. And I remember all these kids trying to peer pressure me into Tolkien. I finally picked up Tolkien. I still didn't know anything about Tolkien's Christianity, so I just read, The Hobbit, which doesn't have that in, but The Lord of the Rings does, and it went right over my head. And I only after like reading about Tolkien and reading about and watching videos, I realized the context and what else is going on in the subtext. That's like Crime and Punishment. Like Crime and Punishment has that. Like he's trying to make a Christian argument, but not talk about Christ or talk about Christianity. So like you can go through Crime and Punishment and just think it's about like secular like philosophy, but The Idiot I think is like straight up religious. It's like much more. I think he was trying to make his argument in Crime and Punishment of why things Raskolnikov was doing wrong purposely without you mentioning Christianity, because he wanted to. A lot of the people that he was arguing against were nihilists, and his whole argument to them would fall flat on his face if he just started talking Christ to them. He has to approach them as atheists or agnostics, nihilists, and he has to show them why they're wrong in the context of just Raskolnikov being wrong about everything without mentioning his philosophy of Christ. So like he does it on purpose in Crime and Punishment, where I think I haven't even got to the argument. Oh, I don't even know what the argument Idiot is making yet, but it's clear that Prince Mishkin's. I'm tired. I need to fill my glass of more drinks. This video has gone on for an hour, so, and there's so much filler that I'm just saying right now about this. This is just supposed to be about Notes from the Underground, but Notes from the Underground is short, and I don't know. See, this is what I want to do with other writers. I want to read their works and like, but I read so much genre guys. Like, I'm really into Bram Stoker, but Bram Stoker like is not trying to sell me a philosophy. Maybe he is. I think there's a few novels, but it's like not like deep. There's one novel about Bram Stoker I want to read, which is about like there was a big issue about tomboys in the 1890s, and Bram Stoker's very like gentlemanly. It was a big argument. It was like political, but it's not deep. It's not about like soul searching stuff. He was just like we should accept tomboys, and other writers were like it was someone wrote the anti tomboy novel, and so I'm like I'm really in the genre like writers or like Ian likes Bram Stoker, even though he does a couple horror things. He's not really genre because he does like social issue stuff, but he's not deep, Like, I'm trying to like make YouTube booktube videos that are kind of deeper, and Dostoevsky's deeper. He just is, I guess. I don't know. When I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, he's not deep. But I'm thinking about weird, like weeks later, I keep on thinking about it's like, oh yeah, he's thinking all these like heavy kind of stuff, and related to his other works. I want to like understand how Crime and Punishment fits into Notes from the Underground, and how The Idiot fits into Crime and Punishment, and probably read Demons after The Idiot, and then the Brothers Karamazov. People say you can just read Brothers Karamazov right off the bat, but I had trouble getting into it when I tried to, and I was like, yeah, I should go back and like get to his other earlier books because there's stuff that's going on, and I think Brothers Karamazov, it's like it's the top one with Crime and Punishment, those two. Um, hold it back a little bit and read The Idiot and then Demons first, and then people say, oh, you can just jump into Brothers Karamazov, but I think there's a lot going on, or like just connected to his novels and his thoughts. Like I'm really into Philip K. Dick, or I was. I haven't read him recently, but in my early 20s, like he's crazy and he thinks like deep things, but his novels are silly, but like little things pop into his novels. And if you read his novels kind of like in order, you kind of see like his train of thought and how like Philip K. Dick is going more insane as like he's writing more and more novels, and like you can see like themes, but it's not like he's forcing it too much, like I don't know, Dostoevsky. There's a lot of like stuff. His ideas are just very connected to each novel. So yeah, I'm too tired. I'm just not gonna be rambling, and um. So yeah, I'm gonna be making other videos. I should. There's a couple of So yeah, I'm gonna be trying to read The Idiot, try to get through that. I could try to get through Dead Souls. But what other things I make videos about? I'm reading a lot of Dashiell Hammett short stories. I try to get into the novels, but like they're really good. But if you put them down for a day, you forget everything because like they're so intricate. Um, so Hammett is hard-boiled crime fiction from the 30s, 40s, actually 20s, 30s. Um, but I'm reading his short stories first, and they're good, but they're not philosophical. And I might make a video about his short stories and building up to his novels I'm reading. I might make videos about I'm reading this very long Chinese novel. It's a classic called The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I tried to read it before, I didn't get far, and now I'm like trying to make an effort to read every day. See, the thing is, I'm learning Russian, but I've also been learning Chinese for years. I've been learning Mandarin for years, but I recently picked up Russian, like, seriously, last year as trying to do it, like, every day. I'm still learning Mandarin, but, like, I'm farther along in Mandarin where I'm, like, kind of, like, I'm taking Russian serious for the last year, and I'm making a lot of progress, but I'm still kind of, like, in the baby phase. Whereas Mandarin, like, I fell off of it for a couple of years because I did in college, and then I took it up again like midway in the pandemic, um, and I'm just further along in Mandarin. But I'm trying to like learn. I'm trying to read books from the cultures of the languages I'm learning or the countries I'm learning because Tolkien said when he was creating his languages, his elfin languages, he had to have he realized that like every language has a culture and you can't just if you create a language, it's going to create a culture like Esperanto has its own subculture. But if you you need like a world for your languages if you're inventing a language artistically. He wasn't making a language for people to use for international reasons like Esperanto. He was Quenya and oh, I'm so tired. Sindarin. I literally had to look at a book. There's a Gateway to Sindarin book I have, and I'm so tired. I couldn't remember the name of one of the languages, and I looked at the word because it's over there. It's on one of my shelves of books over there, and I actually had to remember the word because I'm so tired, and I'm rambling, and this video is rambling, but I'm rambling more, and I should end it, but I don't want to end it. I just want to talk. I want to get away from all this politics stuff. I don't want to go back to like doom scrolling. I've been doom scrolling about politics and the world blowing up and stuff. I don't want to go back. I want to talk about masochistic Dostoevsky stuff because it's better than nuclear warfare. It's depressing, but like as depressing as Dostoevsky can be, it's not as depressing as thinking about nuclear holocaust happening. So I kind of just want to ramble and trying to like say what I am reading in my other projects. Oh, Gothic literature. So during the pandemic, I read a lot of Gothic literature, and it's been so long. I wanted to make videos about a lot of the novels I read, but I forgot a lot of the stuff in it, and I can't like make deep videos thinking about them. So I'm trying to get on to I'm trying to read a little bit of Gothic literature per day. I'm going to like kind of start from the beginning of early Gothic stuff. And the early Gothic stuff is not that great. I usually read a lot of like late Gothic stuff, so like late 1800s, like Stoker and the early stuff. Like the early stuff is really okay. The first Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto. I tried to read it before. It's really short, and I'm going to try to probably read that because it's like really, 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 really short. And I can make a video about it. It's really like Scooby Stew stuff. It's not good. It just sets the vibe, but it's kind of like a historical document if you're into Gothic literature, which I'm very much into Gothic literature, that you should read to understand what Gothic literature is, because it's like it has all the vibes of later Gothic stuff, the Castle of Otranto, but it's like very Scooby Doo. It's this Scooby Doo stuff, and then after that, I haven't read any Anne Radcliffe, but yeah, I haven't read any of her, but I heard she's good, but she kind of like brings a chick lit feel to see I haven't read any Anne Radcliffe, so I don't want to say anything. Like I might just be saying everything that's wrong, but Jane Austen was really into her, and Jane Austen is like the inventor of chick lit stuff. And like I like the Bronte sisters. Don't get me wrong. This is not me bashing on women, okay? I love the Bronte sisters, but the Bronte sisters are like subtle and more gothic and stuff. Jane Austen is chick lit literature, and I tried to read Jane Austen before, and it's like I have to like literally get myself in a female state of mind and take my masculinity and put it on a shelf. But I don't need to do that with the Bronte sisters. The Bronte sisters are universal, okay? They're like Shakespearean. They're great. Like I don't need to get into a different like headspace completely. And Jane Austen, she was really into like into Anne Radcliffe, and I haven't read anything about Anne Radcliffe, and I'm kind of like dragging my feet to read anything by Anne Radcliffe because she's like the one who really pumps out early Gothic stuff. I was on my Kindle. I downloaded what is it? Jane Austen does the I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong, but Northanger Abbey or something, and she mentions the horrid seven novels in the novel. I haven't read that novel, but she mentions them in the novel because she's parodying Gothic literature, and there's like seven bad Gothic novels and I downloaded them on Kindle. There was a collection. It was like, oh yeah, here's these lost. And people thought they were lost because they were bad and they were horrible. And I tried to start reading one. Which was it? It was like the Castle Wolfenbach, and I only got a few pages in. And I was like, oh my god, this is bad. This is like okay. This is like very genre literature from like I haven't even got that far into it to know if it's chick lit, but the woman writing it is a woman. But it's like they thought these novels didn't exist that Jane Austen created up, and they like rediscovered them, and there's a lot of like bad early Gothic stuff that's on the to be read early Gothic literatures list that like I don't want to drag my feet and read. I don't know. I want to read them, but at the same time, I'm like totally. I'm scared. Not because there's gonna be like scary novels. It's just because they're gonna be an effort. And even reading the Castle of Otranto, or I'm so tired. I'm pronouncing everything wrong. Um, that's like that's Scooby Doo-ish, and that's like a chore. And reading like chick lit from the 1790s is going to be a chore. But I'm really into Gothic literature, so I'm gonna try to like read early Gothic stuff. I might make some videos about me hating on early Gothic literature because I really like late Gothic stuff. I like the more masculine and darker and more. Okay, I can't say masculine because the Bronte sisters are really good, but more developed. Mary Shelley did it. Frankenstein early. She was early, so I shouldn't say like all the early stuff is bad. But Frankenstein's so out there. I mean, like the early Gothic stuff. It's not like about a monster. Like I mean, okay, it can have a monster, but like a lot of the early like Gothic stuff, like it's just about like the monster is family. It's not like Frankenstein is kind of like a you know, um, it doesn't stand in. Then, like a lot of the later Gothic stuff has a lot of monsters. Like the Beetle and Dracula, and monsters become more common in later Gothic literature. And but like the genre is more developed. So, like if there's this goofy monster, like the vibes are still like really good and well written. And Frankenstein's still really well written, but like Frankenstein for the period is like so odd, out of place compared to the other Gothic novels that are being made at the time. So yeah, I started rambling too much about God, but this is just what I'm gonna read. If you got this far in the video, whatever. I'm tired, and I shouldn't have been rambling on about Gothic literature after I read. No, I can make an excuse because apparently the double. I have to read the double, which is Dostoevsky, and that's on the Gothic list of things to be read. My TBR of Gothic literature, because the double apparently plays on a lot of stuff that's in Pushkin and Gogol, and Gogol and Pushkin did some Gothic short stories that are similar to English Gothic novels. Same kind of vibes. So I do have an excuse to bring up, but I was just trying to say what I'm going to be reading. Probably I'm making videos about other than this Russian stuff. So I gotta go because I am falling asleep and it's too late. And yeah, so expected video on the idiot, I guess.